I'm joined today by Peter Adderton, the founder of Boost Mobile, obviously an integral part of this deal. And I should set this up because Peter and I actually got into this discussion over Twitter. It started as a bit of a fracas on Twitter. He disagreed with one of our previous guests, Rob McDowell, former FCC commissioner, and now obviously outside counsel to T-Mobile, in his summation that T-Mobile had a very strong case and the state AGs trying to block the T-Mobile Sprint case did not. So Peter, why? What's wrong with the state AGs case, and or perhaps what's right with it?
Well, I think you've got to have a look at what these guys have been fighting for. And first of all, I guess my point originally from the interview you had with the outside attorney was that it's the T-Mobile hype machine. These guys are constantly pushing the same story when in fact the actual people that are getting hurt the most, which is the dealers, the consumers, are being forgotten. And even if you look at it from the AG's perspective, you know, the AGs are sitting out there saying we're fighting for dealers, we're fighting for employees. I would argue not one of those state attorney generals has actually bothered to go down and speak to these dealers, because this fight that they're having right now is actually hurting those dealers. They're really hurting. We've got, and I speak to these guys every single day, and their sales are falling off. If you look at the last quarter earnings for both T-Mobile, AT&T and Verizon in particular went negative in prepaid. If you listen to T-Mobile's earnings call yesterday where they were high-fiving each other, they're literally hurting the prepaid business because they're focusing on postpaid. Now, their argument is, well, the overall credit scores of Americans have gone up, which is just disingenuous when you think about the low-income consumers.
But Peter,
their
let me
FICO
ask
scores
that.
haven't gone up.
Is this just a durational issue? Is this just because the fight has dragged on so long? Or is there an outcome here that's actually preferable for that group of dealers that you talk about?
Well, I think, first of all, you've got to look at it. The delay actually helps T-Mobile. And everyone goes, well, how does it help them? Well, what it does is it weakens Boost, and it weakens Sprint even more. So when Dish takes over Boost and they take over the prepaid brands, what are they going to be taking over? Is it the same value that they had in March, April at the beginning of this year? No, it's not. I mean, it's declining. So at some point, those assets that they're divesting, that the FCC and the DOJ have required them to divest, are going to be basically worthless. So what we're saying is they need to make a decision now, and they need to actually start working today, because sitting in limbo like Boost is seeing a massive decline. And when you start looking at, you know, the other main providers not actually focusing on prepaid and moving towards postpaid, which, by the way, are arguably a better valued customers from an investor's point of view because they stay longer and they pay more, we've got a real issue. And then you've got the AGs who are sitting back there who are effectively saying, listen, we've got them covered, we're going to look after these guys, you know, we're going to fight for the principle and the ideals. But the practical matter is they're actually hurting those actual people they're fighting for.
But if that's the case, if that is the case, and Boost is getting worse and worse as time goes on, does that negate the sort of benefit from an antitrust point of view of them divesting it at all?
Absolutely, and that's the part that I've been fighting for from day one, is that the state AGs and T-Mobile need to get in a room and they need to sort this out. Look, the AGs, when you look at the regulation that the FCC and the DOJ, they're actually entitled to nothing. I mean, they're entitled to zero. If they lose the court case without any settlement, they're not entitled to anything. Right now, they have an opportunity to get in and start fighting for the people that they're talking about. And, you know, their argument is, don't worry, if we block the merger, you know, Sprint will just go on its own. Sprint will not go on its own. And even if you take the argument that, well, maybe someone like a tech company or a cable company will come and buy them, I can guarantee you, looking at Comcast, Spectrum, and Charter, and their focus in the MVNO space, it's not around prepaid. So the first thing anyone will do...
Peter, when you say it won't go on its own, last question, and just let's do this quickly. What happens to Sprint if this deal does die?
Oh, Sprint's gone. I mean, Sprint will go to some asset sale process, but what I'm more concerned about is that the prepaid subscribers, which has always been a fight between Boost and Metro, are going to be the biggest sufferers. So all the fighting that the AGs are fighting for, effectively, if the merger does fail and Sprint is left on its own, the very people they fought for are going to be left in the hole.